Hello, my favorite guys. How are you? I hope wherever you are that and whenever you're listening to this lecture, you're enjoying yourself and you've been productive and everything. Yes. So let's continue with our lectures, right? I left you with the demise of the Umayyads and the reasons why the Umayyads were toppled and the forces that this is all according to traditional narrative. The forces that came together to topple the Umayyads and the reasons why they did so. That Umayyads were had become emperors rather, the glorified sheikhs, and they looked not very pious, and the Shias still had their antagonism against them, of course, and so on and so forth. And that I left you with the fact that a revolution happened in northeastern Iran, and now you have your map in your mind's eye, I hope. If not, please open up another window and bring the world map up. Try to be proactive when I am also lecturing my friends. So anyway, so a revolution happens in northeastern Iran. It's called the Abbasid Revolution, right? The Abbasid Revolution, and this is according to themselves. This narrative that I will tell you is the narrative that they themselves have constructed for themselves, because the writing of the so-called Islamic history. I have a problem with calling Western Asian history Islamic history, because that is just one. The religion of the region is just one aspect of it, right? Again, we don't call Western European history Christian history, right? So anyway, a revolution happens in northeastern Iran, and the Umayyads are toppled, and the Abbasids come to power. Now, what was the Abbasid claim to power, right? Why did they think they had a right to this power? Before we get to that, right? I want to give a broad picture. First of all, you should sort of keep in mind that the ancestor of the Abbasids is Abbas, right? And we'll get to the greater chronology again, and I will remind you of that. But you see that, from this Abbas, the progeny of this Abbas, much later on in 750, that's when the Abbasid revolution takes place, 750 CE. The progeny is, Abbas is the ancestor, and then we have 15 Abbasid caliphs right here, and these are their names. As-Safa, Mansur is a very, very important caliph. All of them are very important, right? But a few of them much more than the others, right? Mansur is one. Mansur. This is wrong. The spelling is just, the Y doesn't need to be there. This is Mansur, right? And Mansur is very, very important. Two of the most important that we will talk about, and the second is Harun al Rashid, right? So this revolution happens in northeastern Iran, and there is a claim to legitimacy on the part of the revolutionaries, and according to tradition, because of the the antagonisms that they had from various corners. The Abbasids rose in northeastern Iran, i.e., Khorasan. I want you to know this region, my friends. Google it right now, if you please, and look where Khorasan is located. And we will get back to this story again. But for the sake of giving you a broad chronology, we have to remember this, right? We remember that during the the lifetime of Prophet Muhammad, parts of Arabia are supposed to have been conquered, quote unquote conquered, right? Then the rightly guided caliphs here, they're called the patriarchal caliphs, right? And that's where the 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 continued the conquest continued, and we'll talk about the conquest again. The conquest continued, and during the rightly guided caliphs, and then Egypt and Tunis here, and then Iran and Central Asia, and of course Syria, up to the Caucasus. You see, this is between Caspian Sea and the Black Sea. Remember, we had defined this already as the Caucasus region, right? So they had reached, right, even during the rightly guided caliphs, they had reached quite a bit. And then we come to the Umayyad Caliphate, and you know that what you see that what else is added, right? The Umayyad Caliphate here. Remember, we talked about the conquest of Spain, so they go there in yes, what was it, 750, right? Okay, my friend. So this is, and then during the during the Abbasid period, there is ostensibly no further conquest. I will tell you that as far as Iran is concerned, right, this place here, right, as far as Iran is concerned, the hold of the Umayyads on the conquered territories was very weak, and especially, and we will see why this was important, especially vis-a-vis northern Iran, for instance, right? This whole area here, um, right? This whole area here where even the Umayyads had not conquered, right? Not only did the rightly guided caliphs don't didn't not only did they not conquer the northern Iranian territory, very important territory, because the Silk Roads go through it, and we'll talk about that also. But you must remember that we have a series of mountains here, right? And there are regions of very importance. These are Parthian regions, if you remember me talking about it, that these Parthians continue to be functioning through the Sasanian period, through the Umayyad period, and as we will see, up to the even through the Abbasid revolution. But one of the things that the Abbasids had not done the Umayyads had not done specifically, therefore, was the conquest of an important region from northeast to northwestern Iran, where what through which the Silk Road passed, part of it went to Antioch. This has to come here, you see, and then part of it came here to go to the Persian Gulf shipping, and then there was another story to it, and we will get to it. But the shortest route from the riches of, we will see the Central Asia, from where in China was actually the source of the silk trade, right? So China was the source of silk trade, but one of the important sort of avenues of this trade was through what in later history came to be called the Khorasan Highway. So this highway here, Khorasan Highway. Yes, my friends? So, Khorasan Highway. So that they had not, the Umayyads had not conquered. And in these regions, the Parthian families continued to rule, right? Parthian dynasties. We'll talk about this, right? Even more. But for now, I hope you are getting this. Okay, my friends. So the this very vital sort of avenue of trade, and that goes through Mosul and gets to Antioch, and this is the same trade route that where from they want to sort of build build gas and oil pipelines, okay, and right, okay. So the shortest way and the most important way. So the Abbasids, well, we'll get to it later. So ostensibly, right, between the 7th and the 9th century, right, these are the Islamic conquest. They call it the Islamic conquest because after the death of the Prophet in 632, Arabia is supposed to have become Muslim during the rightly guided caliphs from 632 to 661, right? All of Syria and all of Persia and Egypt are supposed to have become Muslim, right? Because these were Muslims, right, who were holding up their swords and whatnot, and attacking, colonizing as many territories as extensive a territory as they possibly could, right, from 660 to 751 to 750, right, and then by the time that Abbasid came to power, this is the extent of uh, the Abbasid realm, right? And so, my friends, one of the things that you have to know is that the Abbasids ruled from 750 to 1258. In 1258, Baghdad was sacked by the Mongols. So there's this caliphate of 5 centuries that's supposed to be the Abbasid caliphate. But as we will see briefly later on, there's no such a thing as Central Abbasid basically from, from 780s onward like 3 decades after the Abbasids come to power, right? There are secessionist movements here in Khorasan, here, right, and a lot of other things are happening, as we will see. So, all right, so there is no such a thing as Islamic conquest, and I tell you why. And there is no, I don't think there is any such thing as Islamic history, if you will, right? Um, okay, so so in other words, right? In other words, from 632, where Prophet Muhammad has died, right? By then, all of Arabia, right, during the lifetime of Prophet Muhammad, from 610 when he started to preach to 632, all of these, inner tribes of Arabia that were not really under anybody's control but their own sheikh's control and whatnot. All of these guys are supposed to have been become Muslim, right? In Arabia during the period of 2 decades. 2 decades were in which Islam had itself not been articulated. We will talk about all of this further again and again, right? But anyway, so and then from 632, I'm sorry, six. So, and then from 632 to 750, right, during the rightly guided caliphs and whatnot, all of Iran and Arabia and Egypt and Libya are supposed to have converted to Islam, right? I will argue against this, right? Excuse me. The conquest actually took place, if you remember, during the rightly guided caliphs, right? So actually from 634 to 661. In other words, in a matter of half a century after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, right, a good section of Western Asia and Africa, right, we are told became Muslim, right, from 632 to like in 30. I'm sorry, in 30 years, basically, right, 632 to 661, rightly guided caliphs, right? They are already, everybody is already Muslim, ostensibly, right? In a matter of 40 years. You look at the history of Christianity. Look, I have no problem with. Anyway, let me not go on tangents. But so in 4 decades, right? Up to Egypt and up to this, all this territory is supposed to have been converted to Islam. You look at the history of any other religion, Abrahamic religion, and this didn't happen to them. They took centuries to articulate themselves. As I mentioned to you, the Old Testament contains stories from the flood of Gilgamesh, right, and from the laws of Hammurabi, right, and it took a long while for it. It was during the Achaemenid period, finally, that most of it was written down, and some of it even later. And the same with the history of Christianity, which basically what was written many centuries. I mean, for 3 centuries after Christ was born, right? The emperor of Eastern Rome was still a pagan, right? And it was then that Constantine, adopted Christianity himself, and then later on made it the official religion, right? So this is 300 years after the fact, but it was not actually up until 600s. Um, um, 600s that most of the population, by the consensus of scholars, that most of the population became Christian. So you compare these time in enormous time spans that took place for every other religion to finally forcefully articulate itself, build an infrastructure, create a full-fledged ideology, and so on and so forth. All of this is supposed to have taken place uh, in the case of Islam, in the matter of 3 decades, or you consider the Umayyads as that, if to 750, 630 to 750, through 1 century, even, it is just not conceivable that that has happened. So so the question of conversion, right, becomes very important. So the, okay, we will talk about the question of conversion later on. But for now, I have to remind you, I mean, just give you this notation, that the Arab conquests that took place, right, are supposed to have gone this way, and this way, right? During the rightly guided caliphs, right? And then the Arabs, in the case of Iran, the Arabs are said to have come and settled all over Khorasan, which is not the case, which was not true. They came and settled on the frontier cities here, and these settlements is supposed to have, in these small settlements, in a sort of sea of Iranians, basically Iranic populations, these small sort of communities in the sea of Iranians are supposed to have started a process of conversion, right? So that all of Iran was converted by then, and was Muslim, right? And these Muslims, they did not like the impiety of the Umayyads, and the wealth and their power and this and that, and came to sort of take over the caliphate, right? Um, well, very quickly, because I don't want this to go too far. Um, I don't want this to take too long. Okay, very briefly, Richard Bullitt. I was not the first to say that this was not possible, that in a matter of 2 to 3 decades you cannot convert whole populations, right? So Richard Bullitt came up with one of the most scientific ways to this day that you can gauge, I think, the conversion curve in Iran. So Richard Bullitt comes and says, okay, look, the conversion curve is like an S-shaped curve, right? That where you have the early innovators. In this case, you can say the Muslims, small community of Muslims, gradually growing, right? Early adopted, early majorities, late majorities, right? And this late majorities here is called the bandwagon period. Bandwagon period of conversion, where Bullitt has calculated that this takes place in the case of Iran from 860 to 960s, basically, right? Um, so a full 2 centuries and a half after the Prophet, right? Um, you know, about 50% of the population uh, are um, are sort of converted, right? And then you have, and then this curve here, when it reaches here, it becomes 100%, after which it goes down and creates this kind of shape, right? So the S-shaped curve, right? That's the period process of conversion, Bullitt argues. This is the period of conversion, Bullitt argues. And how did he figure this out? Briefly, is the following. He said, okay, I look at the local histories of Egypt and Iran, and local histories of the Islamic period, right? The Islamic historiography basically itself starts from, say, um, 800s to 1,000, right? Islamic historiography say. In other words, all of this that I have been giving you thus far, the traditional narrative, is the narrative that we get basically during this period, the narrative that is constructed during this period, apparently based on the oral tradition that, as I told you, comes from the Prophet or his companions, or the companions of the Prophet, right? This chain of transmission, right? As I told you, right? Okay, so this is, right, this is Islamic historiography in a nutshell, my friends. We can have a whole course on Islamic historiography on a graduate level, which we cannot actually here at City Tech. Yes, my friends. So what we have, so Bullitt says, okay, here, look, how do you know that somebody has converted? These local histories, Bullitt said, these local histories are actually biographical dictionaries, dictionaries, right? Um, Biographical dictionaries of the learned men, i.e., literally the alim, or plural, ulama. This is something that you have to know if you're dealing with history of Islam rather than Islamic history, right? Alim, oh, I am so sorry. Is that okay? Okay. Ulama, A. Ulama, learned men, right? So these biographical dictionaries of these learned men Muslim learned man, I mean learned men in Islamic sciences that by, by between 800 and 1000 were uh, were actually flourishing, right? Um, so these are the lists and lists of these alims, right, in these biographical dictionaries. And he started looking at the names of these alims, yeah, and saw that most of their names are such and such. Okay, suppose they are Muhammad, the son of Ibn. Um, yeah, your contemporary figure is called Muhammad Ibn Hassan Ibn Hussein Ibn Ali, for instance. Um, Ali uh, Ibn Hadi, for instance, and so on and so forth, until it gets to Ibn Bahram, right? So he says you calculate 30 years, right, for every uh, every generation. So 30, 30, uh, 30, 30, right, and 30, and you get to the original convert that becomes Hadi, right? So you go back this many centuries, right? Hadi is living, say, in the 900s, and you go back uh, to you go back here, you go back 30, 30, 30, 30, 30. So 5 times 30, 150 years. And you get, say, um, you get, I don't know, 800. Anyway, for instance, right? So you create you create a curve of conversion, and this curve of conversion tells you that the conversions all took place, right, between 860s to 960s in the case of Iran, right? In the case of Egypt, even later, right? It starts from 960s actually in the Islamization, the bandwagon period. But don't forget, only 50% of the population are here at the bandwagon period. Excuse me, I drank some water. Only 50% of the population are Muslim by here, right? And these are for the most part your urban population um, who who have come okay, anyway, who have come to the cities, right, you guys, where the urban men are there in search of learning, but mostly in search of work, right? Because these cities, once the Arabs started settling in them, the cities of this area were trading cities, and once the Arabs came, they continued to flourish, and then the cities on this northern Khorasan highway continued to flourish as well. But this did not happen until the around 800s, right? 800s, where these cities began to grow and the populations began to come into it, and then convert by proximity to the Muslims, right? So this was the theory of bullets, and so this is what I believe, and therefore I don't believe that there was any such thing called the Islamic conquest, right? This is from the Christian perspective that later on came when the coinage Muslim became prevalent, basically from from the rule of Umayyad Caliph Abdul Malik onwards, who ruled from 690, i.e., say 700s onwards, right? That we start getting the coinage of Islam, of the term Islam becoming prevalent, right? And okay, all right. So let's go forward because I have still a lot to talk about with you. Um, I have been kind of keeping time. I think this I'm half an hour into this slide.